Hey YouTube, Al here, and this week I want to talk about Strat pickguards, namely Mexican pickguards and import pickguards, because both of them are ceramic magnets. The stuff you read online is they're pretty cheap, you know, what's the difference really? You might as well go for a US one, all this nonsense, and I just want to show you the difference. So, here we go. So, this is a import pickguard from an import Strat. I don't remember which one it is, but to be honest, all of them have been the same hole spacing, the same cheap ceramic pickups, and same cheap switches. So let's get into it. I have changed this pickup cover out for a cream one just because I felt like it at the time, and I changed this to a big potentiometer. So with that out of the way, let's talk about stock pickguards. Now, first thing you'll notice is the bar magnets on the bottom of the pickups. I've written which one is which just in case I wanted to take the pickups out and use them somewhere else, but they're very, very inexpensive pickups. They're basically made with copper windings, but really the lowest amount of copper they can get away with in the factory. I mean, they work, but they sound very, very thin. They feel very, very weak. There's not a lot of dynamics in them, to be honest, at all. And the telltale sign that they're that type is the bar magnet on the bottom. As opposed to, I know it's lefty, ignore that, the Mexican pickguard. Now you can see this has got the pole pieces down the middle, and it's got two bar magnets either side. And there will be a difference in the amount of copper. This will have more copper in it and will be more conductive and made to a more exacting standard, more designed than it works and it'll do compared to the import. So that's one thing you can note straight away. If you see Strat pickups that have got pole pieces in the middle and two ceramic magnets either side, you can be pretty darn sure that it's a Mexican pickup. So that's the first thing you can see. Second thing you'll notice is that the wires are very, very thin on this. It's just got very cheap plastic covering, and to be honest, there are not many strands of wire in there, which can make it quite difficult to solder. The wire doesn't always want to take the solder. You can tin it, but I've found that it's very fiddly. The ends can be quite brittle and break off, which makes it really, really frustrating to try and solder. You see how thin these wires are here, and they're just a bit rubbish, to be honest. They're very, very, very cheap. So if we go over to the Mexican pickguard, this is the Mexican standard Strat pickguard. You've still got the thin wires, but they are a little bit thicker, but to be honest, pretty much no difference. So you still get the thin plastic wiring. There's where Fender saves a bit of money as well, as opposed to giving you nice cloth wiring that they do on the custom shop stuff, which they used to use in the olden days, and I would argue it's probably not better as an insulator than this stuff, but using this cheap plastic stuff, not that there's anything wrong with using the plastic stuff, it is an indication that it's a lower end pickup as opposed to a higher end pickup, and I think that is probably more of a stylistic thing. That's just my opinion, but there is another difference. Now the third thing I want to talk about is the potentiometers. Two things on this. The first is the most obvious thing. Again, ignore this one. This is the full size one that you get in Epiphones and various things like that. This is a 500K. I swapped it out for a 500K. Just wanted to see if it sounded any different. It did sound a bit different. It did sound a bit brighter. But we'll move on to these other ones. These are the stock ones you will find in umpteen cheap Strats. Honestly, any brand you care to throw a stick at that isn't Fender and is really, really inexpensive will have these mini pots. So firstly, these are a smaller shaft compared to the CTS ones on the Mexican, if you can see that. So the bore of the hole is bigger on the Mexican than it is on the import. So if you wanted to put CTS pots in an import, you would need to slightly widen the holes. And the whole pot is smaller, and it physically wears. It will physically wear quicker because it's smaller and it's cheaper. So that's another thing. again, it's made down to a price, let's be honest. It's made for cost. The tolerances on these aren't going to be great. Whatever value it says on this, these are actually 500k, which I'll get to in a second. The tolerance isn't going to be great. I mean, they're going to be a bit higher or a bit lower, but more than you would probably expect. As opposed to the Mexican Pickguard, where you've got full fat CTS pots right here. And if you go to buy second-hand or aftermarket parts, say if buy parts of a Fender, a US Fender, sorry, or if you want to buy aftermarket parts from, say, Northwest Guitars or True Custom Shop, which is where I've got stuff from there, it's literally these. These are made by CTS, which are the big boy brand that everybody knows and trusts, what Fender's been using for decades, and tried and tested. You know, built like brick S-House. They're not going to die anytime soon. The tolerances are a lot tighter on these. They're a lot more rugged, and of course they're physically bigger. So that's the next thing. The next thing we're going to get onto is the capacitor. Ignore the capacitor in this, because again I changed that. This is the Vichy orange drop that I tend to upgrade cheap Strats with, just to see if it makes a difference. Actually, as a side note, I've no idea why all these cheap Strats come with 500k pots, because normally Strats single coils tend to come with 250k, because the higher the number on the pot, the more high end it lets through, and single coil pickups tend to be quite treblier, thinner, less, well, I say warm, but really it's more high-endy than humbuckers. So for a humbucker, you'd normally have 500k pots, and usually Strats will come with 250. Strats, Jaguars, Tellys, you know, repeat ad infinitum, all that sort of stuff will come with 250k. Why all these cheap Strats come with 500k, I've no idea. And to be honest, I think that is a big problem with import Strats. I think that is part of the reason so many import Strats sound as naff as they do, stock at least, is because it's letting so much of the high end through. And you've got a ceramic magnet as well to start with. They're really kind of, it has a brittle quality to it, ceramic. I quite like it on humbuckers, less so in single coils. It depends on the pickup and application, you know, or like gubbins. But I do think that 500k pots aren't good, aren't helpful. I would rather have 250k mini pots, and I'd be a lot happier with that than the 500k. As opposed to the Mexican Guard, where these are 250, which again is what you'd expect for a single coil pickup. Now I'm not really sure how much of an indication of quality that is. You know, it's arguably the factory probably just got in whatever they had at the time, but all the cheap Strats I've had, without fail, the Iursi, the Shine, my first guitar was a Elevation Strat copy, Squiers, they've all come with 500k pots, and I don't know why. It's really weird. They're going to sound thin. That and ceramic pickups is just kind of knobbling it, in my opinion. But again, these are 250k, which lets less high end through. Basically, those tone pots or volume pots on halfway. Well, these on halfway. Yeah, those on the 500ks on halfway will be equivalent to these full up. You know, give or take. It makes less of a difference than it sounds like from what I'm saying there, but trust me, it does make a difference. So that's the next thing. Next, we're going to talk about the capacitor. So again, this is a Vichy orange drop I've put in there. It's not the stock type, but here's where things get a bit odd. And I was surprised by this. So you get CTS pots in the Mexican, but they still give you one of these dark brown capacitors, which I'm unsure how good quality they really are, because it appears to be a ceramic type capacitor. I'm using the word ceramic a lot today. I found that swapping, if you look at my other videos with, say, my Epiphone SG that I did loads of mods to, ended up selling to a mate, but it bounces back and forth when I fix stuff for him. If you look at my PRS Custom 24, if you look at my friend Steve's PRS that I did his for changing the capacitor, I find it really does make a difference. And these are cheap ceramic style capacitors that, in my opinion, are a little bit. I found that when I change, I'm trying to pick my words carefully because it really does depend on your gear, you know, what colour pants you're wearing, all that rubbish. It really is individual differences. But I found that when I went from a ceramic capacitor in cheap guitars to a non-ceramic, like the polyester ones, the orange drops, I did find that sort of really high sort of fizziness just got nipped off. And I really like that. I found that made the guitar a lot more versatile, a lot more palatable. There we go. Yeah. So there's another one. So the next thing we're going to talk about is the switch. So this is an import style switch. How do I know that? Well, all of the connections are on one side, as opposed to on the Mexican, you've got the US style switch. I don't know if this is Oak Grigsby, but when I've bought Oak Grigsby switches from through Custom Shop or Northwest Guitars or wherever you get them from, loads of different places you can buy them from. You see 3 on each side, if you can see that. That's more of a stylistic difference, having 3 on one side, so 3 a side and 6 on one side, but that's how you tell the difference. Now these switches are going to wear physically a lot quicker than the Oak Grigsby one will, because they're built down to a price, aren't they? Cheaper components, smaller components, less durable components. Again, you can see the really cheap flimsy wiring. This is all the stock wiring. I mean, look at that, it's so thin, because I'd be holding it there and I'd try and solder there and then I'd bloody burn my fingers. It's so thin. So that's the difference in switch. Again, they're just going to wear out physically quicker than the big boy stuff. I mean, how much quicker? It depends on how long you're playing and all that, but they are less durable. There's nothing wrong with this switch. It feels alright at the moment. Whereas, to be fair, the Mexican one, which is second hand, does feel a bit less positive. It just feels a bit, you can hear that, less clicky. It just feels a bit less, well, yeah, a little bit less positive really, a little bit less self-assured. I'm going to try a little bit of contact cleaner in this and see if it cleans it out, but in theory this is wearing, it should wear slower than the other one. I don't know how old this is, it could be quite warm, but there you go. Oh, and again, if you look at the wiring on here, it's thin wiring. It's thicker than the input stuff by quite a margin. Trying to hold it steady, but it's still pretty thin stuff. Not top quality, if you can get it to focus. Still plastic, not awful. It'll do the job. I mean, it's not awful wiring. It is a hell of a lot thicker than the import stuff. And of course, the final thing is, if I haven't mentioned it before, the spacing on the holes is going to be different. So you won't be able to take out your import guard and just put in a loaded Mexican guard, because the screw pattern is different. If you can fill and drill, then, you know, fair play to you, you can do that and you won't have a problem afterwards. I don't have the tools to do that, annoyingly, but that's one thing you can do. Even if I could do that, this is a lefty guard. I just want the pickups and the pots that came with it. A really nice welcome surprise. Huzzah. So there's the difference between the Mexican and the import pick guards. They're both ceramic magnets, but as you can see, it just seems that Fender have taken a lot more care and attention with this one than this one. Or rather, you could argue it's for who's going to buy it. The kid who's going to buy this just wants a Strat and probably doesn't know what's in it or what's required, or, you know, everything works and he's happy and it makes noise. This is a bit more for the gigging musician. So the parts are bigger, they're higher quality, they're going to wear less quickly. The pickups will be more dynamic. If you can see the pole pieces, actually, they're staggered pole pieces. And there'll be proper magnetised pole pieces as well. You can see that, as opposed to the very, well, not flat, small. I mean, I can't tell if they're, no, they look flat. I thought they were staggered, but they're not. It's just because I've got the pickup in one side. They are flat pole pieces, completely flat on the top. The other ones are beveled, if you might have noticed. So these are, if you look, these are flat tops. And they're not magnetised. It's just this bloody fridge magnet on the bottom doing all the work. As opposed to the nice beveled edges, if you can see. If you can see around the edges, they're not just flat tops. So if you're looking into getting a Strat or wondering what the difference is between a Mexican and maybe a high-end Squier, I can't speak for the Classic Vibe series or something like that, but if you look at the affinities, if you look at the bullets, probably the standards, to be honest, they're most likely going to be the mini pots. So there you have it. That's the difference between Mexican and import pickguards for Strats. Hope it's been helpful. If you've got any experience with this, any more information, please leave it down in the comments. There are some great videos on other differences. I've never owned a Mexican Strat, so I can't talk. I'm just showing you what I've got, and it came straight out of a Mexican Strat. So there you go. I'm just sharing the information. Thank you very much for watching, and my name is Al. Like, subscribe, all that nonsense, and I'll see you next week. So until then, bye.
Bye!